On the 4th of March, the House of Keys will choose 4 people to become members of the Legislative Council. Prior to that vote, Agenda will be speaking with all the candidates so that you can find out more about the people that hope to become national politicians. We hear this week from businessman Gary Clueit, who is aiming to get elected to LegCo at his second attempt.
I'm basically first and foremost a businessman. I have successfully run multinational companies. I've started them. I've things for close to 50 years. I've moved companies across borders. I've expanded internationally. But my concern at the moment is that we have, people on the island, I think, generally are facing a lot of fear and uncertainty over the future, and including the very near future. The elderly are terrified that they're not going to be able to afford to put a decent meal on the table, to heat their homes over winter, or actually to get urgently needed health care when they need it. And then you've got the young people who seem quite despondent because they don't seem to be able to get out of the low wage cycles, high rents, and affordability of housing. So quite often you'll see where somebody who's in a high-priced rental, if they could actually get a mortgage, they'd have more money in their pocket at the end of every month, simply because the mortgage payments plus all the other things like that turn out to be less than the rentals. And I think there's also some concern among some of the young people I've spoken to about the increasing burden that they face in supporting an aging population, and on their wages, and it's hard for them to resolve this when they're struggling themselves and don't see bright futures for themselves. And then, of course, we've got the middle earners who, best way to put it, are fearful, with some due cause, of having to end up paying for everything. And so you just have a population that is not very happy right now. And I've got a lot of business experience. I've got a lot of other experience. I've been around in business for, as I say, for 50 odd years. And I would like to contribute in some small way into helping address some of the issues. I mean, over my career, there's not a political, economic, or financial crisis that I haven't experienced and come away basically better out of it. I'm also, because my companies were always, in the grand scheme of things, very, very small, and my customers were, and to this day, are some of the largest corporations in the world. I'm used to being kind of a minnow swimming amongst the sharks. And to some extent, that's almost like the Isle of Man in the world stage. We are very, very, very small, but we have to live in the wider world. I don't particularly want to be a politician. I don't need the job. I don't need the pay. In fact, I think I'll put on my application, I'm quite happy to volunteer to do the work. I mean, I've been volunteering on the Housing Communities Board for 2.5 years. It'd be an honor to do so, but I suspect, for I've been told, you can't not get the pay. So what I will do if I get elected is I will use the money and hire either 1 or 2 research assistants, because I have I know certain things, obviously, and I have a peripheral knowledge of a lot of other things, but there's a huge amount of knowledge that I would need to acquire very rapidly to be of help to the other elected politicians. So that's kind of where I'm coming from is to try things. I made a commitment. I mean, I've worked hard for many, many, many years, and I've done bits and pieces. My wife and I started a foundation it's still in a California-based one that works in sub-Saharan Africa. That still continues, but I'd always made a commitment to myself that at some point later in life, because when I was full-time business, I just didn't have the opportunity or the time with travel and everything else. I made a commitment that wherever I settled, to pretty much, in all likely, spend the rest of my days, I would do whatever I could to help the community, because I've never actually had an opportunity to help the communities that I've lived in the past. So that's sort of a long-winded way of saying who I am.
Yeah, and you mentioned there the Housing and Communities Board. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is a small way in which you can help.
Yes.
How is that going? Because again, we've had the headline this week about inflationary increases, 19+% increase in housing rentals over the course of the last year. Not seeing a huge amount of movement in terms of big schemes being developed, housing schemes being developed, and we don't seem to be seeing the housing crisis being addressed with perhaps the urgency that maybe Keys members might have felt at the last Keys election.
Yes, it has been a useful introduction to the political world, and the unfortunate thing about it is none of these issues are simple, and things tend to move at the speed of sludge, and it's very frustrating. I think in the near future we will start to see some movement in certain areas. I mean, we spent a lot of last year working on a new homelessness strategy, which is now sort of being deployed and get on things. But the bottom line is that doesn't, from the average young person who wants an affordable house, well, you can do all the homeless stuff. It's critically important to the overall well-being of the island, but it doesn't do anything for them. What counts ultimately, and I think what Keys will be judged on largely in the coming election, which is not that far away, is bricks and mortar. What have you delivered? And it has been slow, but I'm not, and some people have said to me, why would you even want to do this? It is frustratingly slow. Nothing ever seems to get done with any sort of haste. But as I said earlier, my companies, which are all technology-based companies, we sell to some of the biggest companies in the world, and so I'm used to things taking time. So, for example, when you are selling a multi-million-dollar deal, multi-million-dollar, multi-year deal to a large corporation, it takes 2, 3, 4 years, and it does require patience. My gauge is always, are we continually making progress? And yes, at times, the housing thing is just, we're beating our head against the wall. There are, layers of departments and infrastructure and things to get through to get anything done. There are a lot of people involved, but I think there is, some of the signs I've seen and some of the discussions I've been part of recently, there does seem to be a renewed focus on actually delivering bricks and mortar. I mean, we've done enough plans, we've done enough papers, we've done enough, all of that, and none of that puts anybody in a house. And we have an issue. I won't say across the board, because if you're willing to spend, and if you can afford to spend £500,000 on a house, there are probably plenty available. We do have a chronic shortage of decent rental properties, but the real crunch comes for young people that want, the first-time buyers type things, or the youngs that are earning a little bit more, but they still don't have quite what it takes. But then there's also the elderly. We have many elderly people that are rattling around in 4 and 5 bedroom houses that, the kids have grown up and families have left. In a lot of cases, the spouse has died and they're left in thing. And there's nowhere to downsize them. A lot of them would love to in a little 2-bedroom bungalow and things, and they're not there. And sort of when they do come on the market, occasionally, if you look at a price per square meter, they're more expensive than anything else because they're in such short demand. So it's something we have to. We have no choice. If we want to grow the economy, if we want to grow the island, we have to sort out, And I've got, to me, there's 5 things that are all interrelated. There's housing, there's healthcare, there's education, there's transport links, and one other that I am really concerned about is food security. Food security to me is national security, and we are very, very dependent on a ferry and very, very dependent on supply chains across the water, and that worries me.
But we shouldn't be short of honey, I believe. You're a master honey maker, is that right?
Well, I don't know about a master honey maker. I'm a trustee of I was recently elected as trustee to the British Beekeeping Association, and we've got a lot of activities going on. But the reality is, we can't, because we looked at this from a UK perspective. Is, well, how about we just ban all imports of honey, because a lot of it is adulterated, and it's not actually real honey, and just work with the local producers. But the UK imports 65,000 tons of honey a year. There's no way that the beekeeping community can provide that. And if it did have to, the price of honey would probably skyrocket. I think it's the same on the island. It is encouraging that almost every business you go into on the island sells honey from somewhere, and that's really nice to see, and people are very, very supportive. But I don't know that we could actually. We don't have good numbers that are yet of exactly how much honey is imported onto the island from across. And that would be a useful statistic. But I suspect that even the local beekeepers here couldn't supply, what we need on the island.
So, you've identified problems. How good are you at identifying solutions? What is the answer? Well, let's pick one of them. You're on the housing board. Where are the obstacles to change, and what needs to change?
Well, I think fundamentally one of the big issues that's facing everything in government right now is financing. Building physical housing is not cheap, and the money has to come from somewhere. I don't think it's undoable, because fundamentally, if you look at the social housing, for example, ultimately it can pay for itself. If it didn't, after the war, Britain, which had not much, they were deeply in debt and everything, spent £1 billion on social housing. It was one of the best things they ever did for the economy, for the people, for everything else. So there are opportunities. We just have to shake that stuff out. We have, there's been discussions. There was an announcement, I think it was November 23 at the government conference. The Chief Minister announced the Housing Association to try and consolidate and things. And one of the things which I think is extremely important, at least on the social housing side, or public sector housing side of it, is that all the funds and things are reinvested. They're basically ring-fenced, and so we need an ability for whatever organization that ultimately takes responsibility for this, to be able to have the ability to raise capital to build. and also that any surplus coming in from rentals and things that are reinvested in housing, that they don't go into the Treasury General Fund. But that's, so as I say, I think it's too. It seems like it's too late. But there are a few things starting to shake loose now. I think also politically, many members are suddenly realizing that we actually need to do something very, very soon. So I'm quietly confident that we will see something in the not too distant future.
In terms then of, well, yes, why LegCo? Why would you not have a crack at the House of Keys? Because it certainly sounds as though policy issues motivate you. You are very much, from what you're saying anyway, interested in the big sort of policy issues. Surely Keys is a better place.
I have been told that. In fact, somebody, one of the members' response was, "You're too passionate to go into LegCo, and you'll probably end up annoying a bunch of MHKs." And it's like, not really. I'm more focused at this stage of my life on more strategic and structural analysis and looking for solutions. I don't see. I think MLC is an interesting role, and it's almost schizophrenic in some respects. There's two, potentially three aspects of it. There's the pure MLC LegCo role, which is basically scrutinizing, coming up with recommendations. To my view, it is about providing assistance and support to the MHKs who are elected by the public. And it's not policy itself, but I suspect over discussions and things like that, you can help them through informed discussions and things like that on fleshing out policy. Anybody can come up with a policy. It's a case of the only thing that counts is how well it's implemented, and how long it takes to implement. So I think that's the thing. But then there's Tynwald. Well, in Tynwald, clearly there's a role for an MLC to debate and vote and question on policy. So that's kind of, it does move into the policy thing. And then of course there's the if one chooses to go into a department, is being a political member of a department. And I was quite surprised. I am surprised actually, and I've asked one or two MHKs, is there any sort of job description or position thing about what are the roles and responsibilities of a department member? And I've been told that, I looked all over, couldn't find one. I've been told there isn't one, or at least nobody else knows of one. And that's a bit things. But again, I think going into a department as an MLC, you're going to be there with an MHK, I would assume, in almost all cases. It's their role to establish policy and things. But at the LegCo role as part of that membership, I think, is more to support the departments in their legislative programs, and again provide advice and assistance and help them and an overview of what they're doing, and become essentially either with a sounding board, but also to ask. I think a great deal of the role is asking questions, and making sure that everybody understands what they're voting on and why they're voting on it, which I think is different from, as I say, from coming up with policy. It's easy to come up with a policy.
So I guess from what you're saying, you would be willing to serve in a department if you're successful.
My view has always been, whatever it takes. I'm not proud. I've run companies where I own the company. I've got employees working for me, and we got a deadline to meet. I'm not proud about going out and making them coffee or bringing them pizza in the middle of the night and things like that. I know there are complaints about we've got too many MHKs and we've got too many MLCs and everything else, but the reality is there's an awful lot of work to be done with a relatively few number of people. I don't want to go into a department or anything else, quite frankly, just because it's expected or they need a body to fill. My enthusiasm is well, for a start, I can't do anything if I'm not enthusiastic about it. That's one of the reasons why in 50, 60 years of working my backside off, I will joke, it's a half seriously, that I've never done a day's work in my life because I can't do things that I'm not passionate about. So if I'm going to take a role in department, I want to be sure that it's something that I can make a difference in. I have no interest in filling just a seat. And it's the same with going into LegCo. If I don't feel I can have some positive input and help Keys make better decisions, more informed decisions and things, then there wouldn't be any point in doing it. As I said, I don't need the money. I don't need the hassle. But I think it's kind of somebody has to do it. So if it needs to be done, I'm willing to do it.
And Keys members will have to make a decision. There are many names on the election paper. Why would they choose Gary Clueit over any of the others that are putting their names forward?
Well, I think I have. And I don't know what the background and experience of the other applicants are. I know a small handful of, well, at least the applicants whether they have become candidates. But I think I have fairly unique set of skills. I mean, the fact is that I understand business. I understand investments. I invest in people, in products, in technologies, in ideas. I know what it takes to build businesses. I know what it takes to attract businesses. I know what it takes to attract investment because I've done it all. I have, as far back as the 1980s, I was delivering on time and on budget multi-million pound government infrastructure projects in several countries around, several different countries. I'm familiar with legislation, legal contracts. I mean, I spent my life working through legal contracts, things, and read things. I've actually written legislation, not here, obviously. I've written legislation that was and herded it through a very fractious parliament and got it signed into law. As I said, I've survived economic, political, and financial turmoil in the market, in the industry and things, and basically I've survived, not only survived, but thrived. I think at this point I am better qualified and have a deeper understanding of anybody in Tynwald on how to actually deliver housing, high quality, affordable housing, which I think is going to be critical, over the next couple of years. I mean, it doesn't matter what we get done in the next 18 months, 2 years. The housing crisis is going to be with us for a while. I mean, we need to deliver 1,000 affordable and public sector homes over the next 10 years. And given our run rate at the moment, that's no mean feat. So we have to look at ways of doing that efficiently and on budget.
We are running out of time, so just very briefly, do you have any political affiliations? Are you affiliated to any political parties?
No, not at the moment.
Because there was an issue when you stood the last time.
Yes. Yeah, I was a member of Green Party. I was a member of the Manx Labour Party. I mean, I talk to people, quite frankly, people who don't want to talk to people with different political views with them are, they're not representing their constituents and things very well. Because as far as I'm concerned, politics is the art of negotiation. All right, everything is about cooperation and working towards some common goals. Now, I can work with somebody who has diametrically opposed views to me on many, many issues. All right. But, there's always going to be some issues where we have common ground on, where we do agree. And so you have to form alliances, even if they're temporary ones, and work with those people. And politics is a lot of horse trading goes on. It's like, well, I have this particular thing that's really important to me and people I represent, and I know you have this thing that's important to you that I don't care about, and you don't particularly care about this one. I'll support you on your thing that you really want to get through if you can support mine. As long as neither of them actually conflict too badly with the things. But I mean, that's the basis of how the political system works pretty much anywhere in the world, unless you run into a benign dictatorship.
That was businessman Gary Clueit. Over the next few weeks, we hope to hear from all the LegCo candidates, so you can take your pick. If you are standing, please get in touch with Phil Gaughan at manxradio.com so we can arrange an interview. Let me know what you think and get in touch if you have any ideas for future shows. Don't forget this programme is available as a podcast on Manx Radio's website. For now, I'm Phil Gaughan. Goramayo. Thanks for listening.